Not that the only thing they have to do is ensure that they're not in crisis. So they could still be in a very, very troubling, problematic state, but it's not crisis. And as soon as they determine that they're not in crisis, out the door they go.
Yeah.
So the other thing that Florida enacted for the first time, and you hear a lot about them these days, and they call them red flag laws. And Florida's version of the red flag law is what we call RPOs, or risk protection orders. So what that does is allow law enforcement to go to a judge, and if somebody has exhibited behavior where there is a threat toward themselves or somebody else, we can now, as of March of last year, we can now get a court order that allows us to require the person that they surrender their guns. And if they don't surrender them, then we can get a search warrant and we can take them, and it also disqualifies the person from purchasing guns. The good thing about the risk protection orders is that we are sitting here today. Remember, if somebody says, I'm going to blow my head off, we can take them, but not their gun. So when they go to the receiving facility, what we can do today, that we couldn't do a year and a half ago, is that we go to a judge and say that this person has exhibited this behavior and these signs, and then the judge, if they find by what's called clear and convincing evidence, which is a pretty heavy legal standard, then the judge can authorize us to take the gun. So there is a mechanism in place now that we didn't have, and if somebody is exhibiting behaviors, and not necessarily because they're mentally ill, maybe just because they're a jerk, okay, is that they're exhibiting these behaviors where they're threatening somebody else, is that we may not be able to Baker Act them, but we can go to the judge, and the judge holds a hearing, and the judge can issue a risk protection order which requires the person to surrender firearms, surrender ammunition, and it prohibits them from purchasing guns. So the initial risk protection order that's entered is for up to 14 days. It's a temporary, and then the judge holds a hearing on a final petition for a risk protection order that's good for up to a year. And there's a lot of rights and due process that's built into that. It's like a mini trial. There has to be live testimony, all the rules of evidence apply, they can cross-examine witnesses, and then the judge has to find, by clear and convincing evidence, that the standards are met. The other thing is, once the judge issues that order, the person doesn't have to surrender their weapons to law enforcement. The only thing they have to do, they can give them to law enforcement, we can't hold them for that year period, or they can give them to somebody else. They can give them to family members, friends, or somebody that's going to put it in safekeeping for them. So it's also important to know that when these orders are issued, it's not a seizure. People get concerned about, oh, law enforcement is going to be running around seizing guns. No, not here in Florida, because what the order does is it requires the person to surrender to their guns, either to somebody else or to law enforcement. So this is not the situation where the cops are running around breaking down people's doors and taking their guns. The only time that would happen is if they didn't comply with the judge's order, and then we would have to get a search warrant to go get those guns. So there's a lot of process built into those. And there's a lot of discussion these days around the country about these risk protection orders. And we do already have them in Florida, and there are 3 counties really that lead the number, and Polk County is number 1, Pinellas County is number 2, and Broward County is number 3. So Pinellas and Polk are pretty much tied. We've done just under 400 since the law took effect, and Polk County has done about the same. So the Stoneman Douglas Commission, which is again charged with investigating the really tragic situation at Stoneman Douglas High School, is that there's no coincidence to why Polk's number 1, we're number 2, and Broward's number 3. So on that commission, I chair the commission. Sheriff Judd is on the commission, and so as you all know, he's the sheriff of Polk County. And the incident happened in Broward. So pretty interesting, it's not a coincidence, that those are the 3 counties that lead the state of Florida. Why? Because of everything that we know and everything we've uncovered, and the reason that we know these are so important to make a difference, to keep the community safe, and to keep people from hurting somebody else, and to keep somebody from hurting themselves. So again, Sheriff Judd and I have lived this for the last year and a half, and Polk County is where this happened, or sorry, Broward County is where this happened. So again, I think that's the reason why you see high numbers for these risk protection orders. But